Sheila Masinde is the Executive Director of Transparency International Kenya. Sheila, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you in the Situation Room.
On the hot seat.
Yes, on the hot seat. Last time we had you here, you avoided the actual hot seat by being in the comfort of your own space.
It was online, but it was equally hot and burning. So
Sheila is used to the hot seat. You cannot be the head of an anti-corruption institution in Kenya and not be used to the hot seat. I am not worried for you, Sheila. Yes, you're more than prepared.
You know, we have been having this conversation as we head towards August on Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Yes.
Is Chapter 6 of the Constitution on trial? Are we actually going to see the full implementation and enforcement of Chapter 6 and all the other attendant pieces of legislation? The Leadership and Integrity Act that brings Chapter 6 of the Constitution to life. That says somebody who is seeking to serve in public, especially in elective office and in appointed offices, should be of high moral integrity and character, ethical. They should abide by the Public Officers Ethics Act once they're in office, and all this and the other. And then now it comes to vetting for this office. So IEBC, should IEBC be clearing these people? Who does IEBC rely on to support them in making this decision? Okay, the various institutions, whether it is the EACC, the DCI, whether it's the who else? The
others are KRA,
certification authorities,
taxation,
KRA and all. And there's been debate. So now, yesterday, the chairman of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, said, as far as we're concerned, people who've been impeached, we are not going to clear them. But he says, also as far as we're concerned, in accordance with the law, somebody who has gone to court, has been declared guilty or has not yet been declared guilty, they're same boat. As long as they've not exhausted all avenues of appeal, if they come to us, we'll clear them to vie again. Which raises the question that everybody has been having. Now, your institution, together with Njiro Gekonyo's institution, the Institution for Social Accountability, and others, the Institute and others, have come together and you've launched the Red Card campaign. Okay, tell us about that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Eric and Ndu and City. Thank you for having me, and Shiro as well. And yes, 2 weeks ago, as the National Integrity Alliance, it's a season of alliances, but ours has been there for more than 7 years. So it's not a Johnny Come Lately alliance like these political alliances.
Who's your running mate?
Who's
your running mate?
As soon as yes, I am running mate, we don't have those kind of problems. As we are just there to tell Kenyans about corruption and show them the direction to take in terms of leadership and integrity. But as the National Integrity Alliance, we've been in existence since 2015. We came together as institutions. Inuka Kenya, the Institute of Social Accountability, TI, Transparency International Kenya. We also have the Kenya Human Rights Commission and Mzalendo Trust. So together and following the work that we did in 2017, because we also issued a red card list of 20 in 2017 and had this similar campaign and listed individuals who we from various cases in the courts who are facing charges of corruption and other offenses, people who had also been listed by various parliamentary reports, the Auditor General's reports and other competent public fact-finding institutions. We listed those names and said that they were not fit to hold office because they had ethical issues. They had questions, doubts around, their ability to be able to manage and oversight public resources. Unfortunately, even at that time, there were some that didn't go through the sieve but didn't get back to public office. But for majority of those who did, we actually made an effort to update where they are now, where the red carded of 2017. You'll find that most of them have fresh cases, some even murder charges as well.
Yep.
So more serious cases. And that's why we felt this time again we need to come out very strongly to ensure that this time we don't have the same situation as 2017. So we did a list of 25, a very, very thorough process, and we actually went as far as having a public vetting panel which comprised other institutions from church, the religious sector, the media, as well as other non-governmental organizations which are also interested on issues around human rights and accountability. So we believe that list is thorough because it was validated by others who are also looking and concerned around issues of integrity. And that is after we had their confidence and we had thoroughly checked all the names and the issues that each of those people face. We were then able to publish that list 2 weeks ago, and now we are actively seeking and asking institutions that these people should not be cleared. But we have seen IEBC has already done the clearance, and just also noting that EACC has already also just published its own list of 241. And despite this, I think what I've seen the statement from the IEBC chair yesterday is that the only people that they, from their reading of the law, particularly guided by Article 99 and also 193.3, which of course says that, as you have said, Eric, that you cannot be disqualified if you're still, appealing or seeking review of a sentence or a conviction or a judgment. And so they're the only ones. They said that they will be able to block those who have already been removed from office as per Article 75.3. That's the ones who have been impeached. But we still hold, because I believe that we are not reading the Constitution holistically. You need to read it holistically. We just can't be boxed by Article 99, Article 193. I think we have been given all sections, all laws and all to say that this is the reason why we have to block these folks. But we're telling them, go back and read the entire Constitution, get the spirit and the letter of the Constitution. And starting just from Chapter 6, when you look at Chapter 6, it actually implies that there are ethical considerations. There's an ethical standard that has to be applied, such that, once you have been, when you read it well, it says that when you look at Article 73, there's an aspect around, you have to meet certain moral and ethical standards. It talks about that you have to satisfy educational, moral, and ethical qualifications, in addition to others that are required for public office. And for us, once you have been charged in court, once you have been accused of corruption, you have been charged in court, you have been removed from office, you have been convicted, already there's a question mark in regard to your character, in a sense that you'll not be adequately able to bring honor to that office that you will be serving. Command respect, bring respect, win public trust, because those are all things that Chapter 6 is looking at, that anyone who is in public office, you must bring honor to that public office that you serve. You must be able to win public trust. So once you already have aspersions cast on your character because you have charges in court or you have been accused of certain offenses, whether they're ethical issues or criminal issues, then it just means that you don't satisfy the requirements of Chapter 6. But we are all going quickly to Article 99. That unless you have exhausted all appeal mechanisms, then you are allowed to continue holding office or vying for office and so on. So we're asking, please go back and get a reading of the entire Constitution to understand where we are coming from in regard to why these people should be blocked further from seeking public office.
Sheila, how far in terms of resolution would then this red card list go? There are many factors that are at play here. There's been the argument of the moral index, and in terms of morality here, where you're saying if you have been besmirched, that alone is enough for you to step down. Or if there's a doubt on your image, that's enough for you to step down. We've seen that happen in very many other countries. That if there's even a suggestion of something untoward, you leave.
Yes.
Many have argued that, the moral index here is not as high. One. There's another factor to play here, and the biggest probably is the law itself, whereby it can be seen as a loophole that people are going to use. 99, everybody's using it right now. Well, I haven't exhausted everything. So how far will, and I ask for a reason, how far will this list, will this red card go in seeking resolution to this issue, what would it do?
No, as I said, this time we're really determined to ensure that we go as far as we can. And that is why I'm saying we need to go back and get a holistic reading of the list. As you have said, that the moral bar in this country is quite low, but we need to take it up. And we actually didn't start off Chapter 6 in that way. If you remember, was it in 2011 or 2012 when the Deputy Chief Justice, Nancy Baraza, was removed from office? Do you remember? Yeah. And for pinching, a security guard's nose.
Right.
Yeah. And she apologized. I think there was even a delegation sent to the lady's house to say sorry, Pole. But people insisted that you have actually breached Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
Yep.
It wasn't a criminal offense, but you violated someone's rights. And on that account, she left office. And at that time, the Chapter 6 bar was so high up there, And so that's why, for me, when someone says that, you've been accused of murder, murder, not pinching a nose, murder, and you remain in office for 4 years after those allegations, because you're saying, I'm still in court, I have not exhausted all my appeal mechanisms. I mean...
or having been, because this is, look, there's no need to beat around the bush here. There are cases whereby individuals have been convicted,
Yes.
sentenced,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And still, because of this appeal loophole, they're able to say, it was my enemies who were after me, and I'm going to prove then that I can still go ahead and do this, having then received a nomination certificate from the same IEBC. So this is what we're speaking about, that we could seem like we can keep talking about it, but until and unless there is a change in the law,
But
it seems that is what is going to do.
No law.
No, but exactly. Why should there be a change in the law? I'll explain why I'm asking the question. I asked the Chief Justice that same question. Language, wording, phrasing, again, may obfuscate this matter. When you impeach, it means you are found guilty of certain things, isn't it?
Yes.
But within that system, there is a mechanism for appeal. Even those who've been impeached are appealing. But they remain impeached.
Yes.
Exactly.
And
So-
even...
And a new person is sworn in.
Yes.
And the new person, and even the ones, and that's our argument as well, that even if you have been convicted,
Yes.
because when you have been convicted, like for instance in this case of the MP who has been, that there's this whole hue and cry about his clearance, he was convicted, right? He's stayed in jail, I think, for almost 4 months as he was trying to raise bail, and appealed the case. But you see, the sentence of, is it 67 or 69 years,
Still
has not
remains.
been set aside.
Yeah.
He's still been sentenced, So how on earth is he then allowed to vie when he's already been sentenced? He's only out here because he has paid bail, and the case is ongoing. But even in that case, the appeal case, that sentence has not been set aside while the case is still being, had.
But even as a lay person, our laws, from what I've been told by legal individuals and minds like yourself, Sheila, is that in this country you are innocent until proven guilty. When you've been sentenced,
You've been proven
You've been
guilty.
proven guilty.
precisely.
Exactly.
So you are appealing the guilty verdict. You are no longer innocent.
Yes, but the point
Yes.
is, because I thought we were on the same side and then I've lost you with that last one, because what we are saying is once you're charged, once a case has been made against you, evidence has been generated accusing you of murder, economic crimes and other misdeeds, we would expect that you step aside.
That's enough to have you step aside.
And then not be eligible to vie until the point where you clear your name.
I'm in
Exactly.
agreement. I was merely furthering the argument, following.
That it is beyond a charge now.
Yes.
It's beyond
So
an
it's not
allegation.
just a
It's not
charge,
an yes,
allegation.
exactly.
It's not
So
an accusation.
you're innocent when that
Yeah.
case is ongoing.
Yes.
This one was concluded.
When a competent judicial officer has
Yes.
actually found you guilty, what are we discussing?
Yes.
No, that's an open and shut case.
Yeah. So how was
well,
it issued?
not
No,
Why
the
was
it
IEBC.
is not with the
IEBC,
IEBC.
not
It.
really. And the IEBC, the institution that is charged then with carrying through an election and clearing individuals who will then contest in said election.
In
Not to
fact-
them. Not to them. It's
In
not
fact,
open and shut.
what happens with that is that now will go through the courts. Because the other thing, as Sheila mentioned at the outset, is of the original, of the 2017-20 list of 20, who were then cleared, they went on to accumulate other cases,
Other cases.
several of them.
Yeah.
And then several of them were then subsequently impeached anyway.
Yeah.
So the cost to the taxpayer in terms of loss of services, in terms of the public drain, is significant.
It is.
So IEBC needs to do their jobs. And that's the question I wanted to ask. How do you rate the performance of the EACC and IEBC now compared to 2017 and compared to your expectation?
Well, it's too early to rate Wanjiro because I've called you Wanjiro, meaning I'm so serious in what the point I'm
good.
making.
Yes, let me sit up straight. Sheila is speaking. Yes.
So it's too early to rate because, like for ESCC, they've just released the list. I want to see how far they'll go in terms of pushing and making their point. You see, for IEBC, I think that they're still stuck in that box of Article 99, Article 1993, and not really, despite all the clamor that we have made in the last 5 years, having gone even to court on a number of these issues around integrity. And maybe allow me to go back to Ndu's question in terms of how far we'll go, just to share that one of the things we have done is this time we have actually taken a couple of matters to court to seek the court's interpretation. One, and even in terms of who's the final custodian of Chapter 6, because there seems to be kind of a grey area. IBC says that it's the one responsible for clearing in terms of, these issues around Chapter 6, such that what ESCC did, like that list that was presented of 241 and even the 106 in 2017, is just, their work is just to list and profile. They have no, it is now IBC to decide, okay, so you've given us this list, what are we going to do with it? It's not ESCC saying that, no, don't block this. It's merely just profiling and kind of recommending, So we feel that because ESCC, if you read Article 79 of the Constitution, under Chapter 6, it requires an independent commission which will be responsible for ensuring compliance and enforcement of Chapter 6. In our reading, that should be the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. But in essence, in terms of now, when you look at what IEBC is doing, in terms of now being the final say, in terms of clearance in regard to Chapter 6 matters, then IEBC has kind of taken that role. But it should be ESCC. And we have gone to court and asked, give us the declaration, who's the final custodian of Chapter 6? Because if we leave it to IEBC, for sure, it is the electoral management body, but it is not responsible for Chapter 6 issues. That information, those processes are charged with ESCC. So it then follows that they should be the ones responsible and have the final word in terms of clearing people in regard to integrity. So we want that direction from the court. I can't talk much about it because, of course, it's still a matter under court, and we wait to see what the court will rule. But if we don't move forward on this, I believe we'll continue to get stuck, because IBC will not do this for us. And you see, our reasoning is also because when it comes to issues around taxation, it's KRA which does the clearance. When it comes to issues around, the issues around criminal matters, DCI, certification exams, academic issues, we have the Commission on University Education and the Kenya National Qualifications Authority, NEC, and all that, looking at the certificates. So why does Chapter 6 have to be done by IEBC when all the other processes are manned by the respective institutions? So we believe that this will give us a way forward, and that's why I said we are going that far, as far as trying to now, once and for all, because you've talked about changing the law. If we have the same characters going back to Parliament, we'll still be stuck in a box, because we have the same people who are listed. They are going back to Parliament. They're not going to change the leadership and integrity law and all the other anti-corruption laws. They want to preserve themselves. It's about status quo for them. So there's no progression coming from our elected leadership if we have the same lot. So we'll have to see how we canvass it in other spaces, and that's why we're looking at the courts, so that we can actually get this, Chapter 6 fully implemented in its full letter and spirit, as we desired when we passed the Constitution in 2010.
I think the burden moved away from the courts a long time ago. It went into these so-called independent institutions and the judiciary, because the Constitution, like we keep saying, is clear. The law is clear-ish. Where do we seek the clarity? It's in court, and we can actually get the law enforced and written and given clearance and clarity in court. Anyway, let's take a break. We'll continue this conversation shortly. It's 8:30.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
We are talking about the integrity question, the red card campaign, spearheaded by several organizations, civil society organizations coming together under Transparency International. Sheila Masinde is Executive Director of TI Kenya. Wanjiro Gekonyo is What are you? You know, you have a very fancy title at TISA.
National coordinator.
There you go.
A more egalitarian term
Hey,
than executive.
National coordinator.
coordinator.
Why don't you just add service to it since?
In between national and coordinator.
Yes, somewhere,
the end.
even before.
At the end.
Service national coordinator.
National Coordinating Authority at the Institute for Social Accountability.
Hello, people. Yeah. Let's stick to the subject. Let's focus.
The subject is on
Stop trying to distract us from the important matter of integrity of our elected or
who has
aspirants.
the authority on clearance of candidates. Well, that is one issue. But also, when we talk about Chapter 6 of the Constitution, that then gives the authority has been given by the Constitution to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to be like, the custodian of Chapter 6, to make sure that they're monitoring, they're ensuring compliance and enforcement of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Then members of Parliament went to give life to Chapter 6, and they came up with the Leadership and Integrity Act, and they added some few things. They left very many things, and they just said,
Did you
And
start by
spiked
saying
a few.
they went to give life?
yeah.
They were building a mortuary.
Exactly.
They were morticians.
Exactly.
Yes, it was a funeral home.
Their advisors were telling them, just add this one sentence, this
That's
clause.
it. And it will sort us out.
Nullify
You
all
know,
And
the
that
others.
it has done so far. But you see, is the issue,
Effectively.
and I keep arguing
Yeah.
that yes, we have this challenge with what the law says, but then we have the mother law, the Constitution, and we've got the institutions. And every time, you remember when you hosted the EACC here and the IEBC, and we asked them, so you're all sitting here and telling us, blame Parliament and the law that they gave us. It's not us. Our hands are tied. We would like to bar these people. But you see, now in fact, now the burden moves to the voter. The voter, why are you electing somebody whom is of questionable integrity and character? My argument is that if these institutions actually do serve public interest, then they'd put public interest first.
Yeah.
And the individual, individuals have a right, blah, 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 to fair administrative justice. Yeah. But which is bigger, individual or public?
It's public. It's a public interest.
So if IEBC, for example, just went with public interest and said, yes, Mr. So-and-so, you have been found guilty by a court. You have been sentenced to 67 years in prison. You have that appeal going on. We shall not clear you. Mr. So-and-so, go to court.
Yeah.
Let's have that sorted.
Yeah.
And hopefully then we find a court that is also willing to look at public interest and say, indeed, when the magistrate's court found you guilty and you've gone now to start appealing, the burden now shifts. You remain guilty. And I think that's where I say all is not lost if the judiciary, the EACC, the IEBC took public interest to heart.
Yeah. And that's a simple thing we're asking, Eric, because individual interests trump public interests. And if you look at Article 3 of our Constitution, every person, including those institutions who we have put in place to ensure that this Constitution is implemented, as opposed to ensure that you respect, you uphold, and defend, protect the Constitution. But to be honest, right now, I'm not seeing that protection. Where you say, my hands are tied, and you've been saying this for the last 5 years, actually 10 years, because we passed this Constitution in 2010. So 2013, 2017, and now going on to 2022, we are seeing that Chapter 6 may not be enforced, and we'll see the same. In fact, the leadership quality is getting worse when you look at how many people with issues are passing through that pipeline. But if we're able to look at the public interest over individual interest, because some of the arguments I've had, but these guys also have their rights. If they're in court, it doesn't mean that they're guilty. And yes, under principles of natural justice, of course, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty. But when something it touches on public, when it touches on public
guilty.
office,
but even once you're proven guilty, we are still seeing them being cleared. You see, so it doesn't even make sense for us. But I think the other matter is I get this argument that, these politicians also have their rights, that you're going to stop someone from vying for 5 years, keeping them in the cold because their issue is still being processed. And I'm like, but what about the public interest?
Sheila, how are we keeping them out? were we with them when they committed whatever offense that took them to court and were we part of the process that found them guilty or culpable? No. We are going by what the court said. If the court had cleared them, they would have been saying, this person is actually innocent.
Exactly.
This is not our view.
Yeah.
It is an understanding of what our court process has arrived at.
Yeah.
But what I find, let me ask this question. Do you think the Constitution Implementation Commission, do you think it was the right judgment, right decision to have it last for only 5 years? I'm asking this question because every time we have an issue, I'm thinking, but why did they shut the... It isn't the only one.
It was 3 years.
It was 5 years, I think.
Your pet subject.
No, it is my pet subject.
The Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution and the Transition Authority.
Precisely. How do you stop these authorities, these commissions, after one season, one electoral cycle, when we are having problems that they ought to be the bodies that was helping us resolve even now?
Yes,
So
but
maybe the
see-
Constitution should ask-
But City, one of the points is that the expectation is that institutions are set up and will then execute their mandates under fear of the Constitution. In the interest of the Constitution, that's the assumption. Of course, this has not happened. So you don't want to have oversight institutions being perennially oversighted.
Yeah.
Wait,
But-
don't we have the other commissions, independent commissions that are there for life?
Yes,
But
that's
still now
the point
those are
I'm
the
making.
institutions that have been established. CIC was established
I understand.
So the
to,
point
to help come up with the
Give life.
laws.
It
I
was-
understand.
To give life to the Constitution.
The
You come
chap-
up with the laws, you go home.
the
No,
chapter
but
15
five years is too short a time.
But
well,
they
it
finished
wouldn't
their
have
job.
changed anything because
It wouldn't have changed anything.
The
No.
chapter 15 institutions, their primary role is the defense and protection of the Constitution in letter and spirit. So whatever IEBC is doing is actually unconstitutional because it is not just EACC that's supposed to uphold the Constitution. They all are. But unfortunately, they become party to politics. And let me just put another perspective on this. Number one good thing that we've seen is that once impeached, you remain impeached.
Yes.
Also, if dismissed, you remain dismissed. So it takes it back into an administrative process. In a way, that is a good thing because if our administrative processes work properly, then we'll begin culling these people as opposed to waiting for this long legal process. It then goes back to the question of the public service and the impartiality of those processes, because what we might begin to see happening is the governor will come and say, now, if I misbehave, my public service is going to undermine me. And so we now need to keep an eye on the objectivity of the public service vis-a-vis dismissals of CECs and all of that. The other point I wish to make, and this is now going a little bit philosophical, on why are we struggling here with the IEBC and the EACC. Wandi Anjoya talks about a class that dare not speak its name, and she quotes an article, a piece on this, The Tyranny of the New Kenyan Middle Class, where she says, even as they exert coercive power in Kenya, members of this class remain largely unrecognized as a class with its own economic interests and one that holds contemptuous and racist views of Africans despite being made of Africans. Very nice article published in The Elephant. And she goes on to argue that our problem, because we keep looking at our political elite, she's saying there is a whole bureaucracy of a middle class professional elite as well that is undermining the implementation of the Constitution, and this is the case. It's these IEBC officials
Am I
who
allowed
aren't
to disagree
elected,
with Dr. Wandia?
who aren't elected, but act in their own private interest.
Disagree away, City.
Okay. You see, what you've read sounds really nice. When you think about it, you say, yes, let's now find a new class of people to apportion blame to, okay? IEBC apportion the blame to the voter. We apportion the blame to the politicians. Now, Dr. Wandia apportions it to the middle class. The understanding that I derive from that article is that the middle class are a hugely influential group of people.
Exactly.
Okay? And that they are the ones who we can look at as the carriers of our ethos as a community. And I'm saying, no, that is not so. that particular distinction belongs to a class of people who fall into that broad category of the middle class, but they are called the politicians who have been elected. Because if you look at their conduct in the place of employment, it's called parliament, and the things that they know they're supposed to do and the things they then do, those things have these far-reaching consequences that we're now speaking of. Because had they had the very attributes that we assume they had, we wouldn't be having this discussion, because they would have known what to do, and this bar we keep speaking of, we would be talking about it still. But when that group of people go in and completely bastardize a whole section of the Constitution to the point where it's completely ineffectual, I will not take the argument to the broad middle class. I will take it to this particular specific group of individuals.
Those ones have failed.
Why create a dichotomy?
Those ones have failed. But then,
Yes.
the checks and balances.
Why create a dichotomy?
Who has a louder and a more influential voice in actually calling them out? In calling out the political class when they fail, in calling out the political class when they don't do what they're supposed to be doing.
Also,
Is it not the people who have access to the information readily?
Also,
who
Eric,
have platforms?
these are people who are bound by Article 232 of the Constitution that binds them to uphold the values of the Constitution. So they are equally bound as public officers. And if you look at, and I think that example was given recently where Donald Trump called some election, was it a returning officer in Georgia, trying to get them to, doctor the results.
To reject the results.
To reject the results. And the officer refused because he had the force of his office. So in Kenya, why don't we have, and we have a petition we launched against the CSE attorney. Not because he's solely responsible for the debt crisis. We know that's a bigger political issue, but because he's allowed his office to be misused on record, his office is cited by the Auditor General as violating the law, serially. So how do we deal with these public officers who hide behind their office because they are not publicly elected, and they agree to conduct themselves in an unconstitutional and illegal manner and subvert the course of law? So it's not exonerating politicians, but they are also part of the problem.
Maybe, can I just add something just in addition to that? Because what I have not seen in some of our institutions is that courage and boldness.
Exactly.
Because the Constitution already gives you that mandate to operate. And so for me, like on the issue of Chapter 6, what's so hard in telling this politician, no, we're not clearing you.
Yeah.
And if you contest it, you take the matter to court. But for now, you stand not cleared. Let me just give you, I think this issue needs also attention. The fact that there's an MP who's been in court for the last, now it's almost, is it 8 years, over the authenticity of his academic certificates.
8 years.
But it was cleared on Monday, and the returning officer said that all the papers were okay, were fine when they, of course, scrutinized them. But these are the same papers that are a subject
of a court case.
Yeah, a subject of a court case, that they were fake. And that's why I'm like, where is our boldness to just say no, that that this person has, there's a whole debate that, and even the school that he says he went to, the headmaster during that time, I said, no, this was not my student. But then
Sheila,
you take his certificate and you don't have the courage to say no. Because then why are you serving in public office?
This is exactly where we lie.
Yeah.
That we can be philosophical about this until the cows come home.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the issue is that we have an inherent knowledge of what is right and what is wrong. That's what we are doing when we're talking about morals and ethics. So it would then give the impression that if you, as whatever institution or as an individual, cannot stand up and say no, that what you're doing is that you are sitting in a position where you don't want to ruffle any feathers,
You are part of
you
the
just
problem.
don't want to call it as it is, then
Exactly.
you are the problem.
You are the problem.
That is it. We can read as many 1 million books as we want, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it is that you know what is right to do. You choose not to do it. You're just as criminally liable as this individual that we're having a discussion about.
Yeah.
But
Say
also,
it.
this debating society that comprises what we are referring to as the middle class and the social media warriors, it is a debating society. Okay, one could argue that debate at some point gives direction and points. But for many people and in many instances, it seems to be an end in itself. You've participated in arguing, you've contributed, you've talked about what you want, you've taken a hard position, and that's it.
Yeah.
But CT, I put it to you, every player has their role.
Yes.
So KOT's role is to amplify, to bring the issue to the attention of the public.
Yeah.
That public officer has, by power of the pen, and there is one colleague, a former public service person who was telling me, when he was first employed, he approved something, and he was amazed that out of that, billions of shillings were released to go and do work. And of course, they went to do work. And he said, this is the power that I wield as a public officer, unseen, unknown to anybody but the public service and his and her colleagues. So the point we are making is that the law does not implement itself. It's implemented at the point where it's designed and legislated by our politicians. Then it comes to the public service who go ahead to implement it. Now, if the public service don't do their job, and these guys, politicians, also don't do their job, what's going to happen? Who's going to help us? And Kenyans, okay, will vote for a thief.
What you're saying is
but
already happening,
Kenyans are very disenchanted because they view their inability to influence the outcome, because the power is with the politicians and the public service. So what we are saying is we see these guys and we have to hold them accountable, as Ndu has so eloquently said. Yeah. I hope we've convinced you that.
What is the
public
issue
service.
with the middle class? You have an issue.
Public service middle class.
No, it's not an issue. It is the reality of what I see. First of all, that class doesn't even exist in this country. By the time you're living from hand to mouth, you cannot be in the middle class. Okay? And the majority of the people we consider, you're one salary away from poverty. So how do you actually claim to be in the middle class? The only difference...
Professional class.
Professional class is a good term, okay? Their voice is not insignificant. What I'm saying is this. Beyond talking, writing about these issues, this very group of individuals are the same individuals who are the companions of the so-called leadership class, the politicians and what have you. They're the people who are the campaign managers, whatever it is you want to call them. Now, they don't seem to believe that these high standards need to be upheld, because if they did, many of them would hold these very people they support to account, and they don't. And the reason why these people have the impunity is because they know they have a support system that agrees with how they go about their business. So that's why you asked about the issue. So why are you talking loudly about an issue which in reality you don't actually even support? Not in reality. So long as it's talking, writing about it, you're right in the middle of it. But the actuality of it, the reality of it, no. You're complicit in the problems that we are talking about. That really is my beef.
You see, I, as Eric, as member of the public, have not sworn any oath of office.
Exactly. To uphold anything.
This person who is the CEO of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, who is the chairman of the IEBC, they swore an office, witnessed by the Chief Justice. And they said, I swear I shall uphold the Constitution. That is it. And by doing that, they got delegated authority from me. And that's
then
what
you
they're
want to come and
exercising.
behave later as though
Let
you
them
cannot be
do
bold
it.
enough to uphold the same thing that
Coming
you
back
swore
to
you
me
would
and
do.
telling me, it's Parliament, and now it's upon you on August 9th not to elect somebody if you know that this person is a thief. Come on.
It's a dereliction of
what
duty.
if they did their job? What if? Just ask how different Kenya would be if they did because politicians don't implement the law. They only make it.
But maybe if I look at it holistically, I think just connecting this argument is our whole accountability system is just flawed, because ideally the people we put in office should be checked by, like now when you're talking about IEBC, they go to Parliament, to report and share their reports to Parliament and so on. But so who checks who? So there's a whole question around our accountability system that we also need to look at. And I still wouldn't put, I know we shouldn't all load it on citizens, but I still will not remove citizens out of it, because at the end of it, we are the ones who are electing those politicians who are supposed to hold some of these institutions accountable. They're supposed to legislate and ensure our laws are implementing this constitution, but are we holding them to account? Are we checking and ensuring that politician I sent to Bunge has been able to do ABCD? We've been complaining about Chapter 6 and the Leadership and Integrity Act for the last 9-10 years. What's my Mbunge doing about it? So I wouldn't say that citizens are totally not culpable and part of it. And that's why I know that we are also, as part of the red card, we're also encouraging, social vetting. These are the questions we should be asking, those people that are going to be coming back home. I'm saying back home because they've disappeared for 5 years. And then they're about to come. They're about to come back home to ask for the vote. So when they come back home, please, those are the things we need to now really interrogate and ensure that there are people who can actually deliver on some of the things that we are complaining about.
One thing, Sheila.
Yeah.
One thing that we all ought to accept is that Kenyans really do trust and expect the institutions to work.
Yes.
Okay? When the police come and tell you, tokeni kwa nyumba, people come out of the house. They'll ask questions later. When the chief comes and tells you, kaa kwa nyumba, you'll stay in the house. When IEBC tells you, choose from this list, you expect that they have done their job. All those things notwithstanding, you guys are the ones who understand the law. I don't know, chapter 195, chapter those things. I, as a voter, don't understand. So I expect that you've done all those things and you're giving me a list that has gone through them chujo.
Yeah.
And
that's it.
That's it. When you go to a
restaurant,
this point,
as much as yes, we may say yes, the voter, blah, 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 but I want to get to a point where, as a voter, I trust my institutions. That they have done their job, and I'm only now selecting based on what I've heard and what I'm thinking is this person understands my issues.
And what appeals to you?
You put it so well. And in fact, I was having a conversation with a taxi driver this week and talking about elections, as you'll do when you're in that situation. And I mentioned this issue of vetting. And he said, our place, we have a very bad MP. And we'd like to get him out. So I told him, so why don't you get together with your men group and everything? He said, the problem is this MP bribes the women's groups. He consistently bribes them. And he went on to explain. And, because I was telling him red card, people in Langata and Kileleshwa and other places are vetting. He said, we can't, because this guy bribes the women MPs. And then I said, why don't you report to EACC? He said, hey, that one is difficult. They can come for you. And I realized, and then he went on to say how this MP gives all the contracts to a company owned by his brother. So there are Kenyans there who sit and can see and are,
feeling powerless.
Are really powerless.
Because they expect the institutions that they've given power to
be able to
do their
deal
job.
with it. Yeah.
Coming to the top of the hour, Sheila, we thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for this opportunity. And my last call, can I just make a last call?
Make it a positive one. I think I don't want to end on a negative one.
I'm really positive that this time for sure we will have, if not the whole 25 that we have, at least we'll have a couple of people blocked because of many of the initiatives that you have taken, particularly through the courts, and we're really looking up to the courts. We know that the Chief Justice Kome has set up a three judge bench to look into all the integrity cases. There are a number of them, and I get confident because it's not just us who've taken these cases, but also citizens. We're talking about citizens as well. So I believe that if citizens continue to take up some of these petitions and issues, then we'll continue to push on further on Chapter 6. Thank you.